Is the Epson ET-2400 printer a good choice for a Linux user? I went looking for some current YouTube videos from Linux users talking about Epson printers. I didn't find anything real current. I also went to Epson's support page and found Linux support to be kind of minimal. So the question was this: if I purchased this printer, would it be a wise investment, or would I be returning it because it wasn't workable? Greetings from Wyoming. OSY guy here. I am an open source guy from the state of Wyoming, and I've posted several reviews of Linux distributions, and I've also posted some videos on benefits of using open source tools. The Epson ET-2400 appeals to me for this particular reason. Here's a close-up of the ink tanks of this Epson ET-2400 printer. It has refillable tanks instead of ink cartridges. I like that design a lot better. Now, I've been using Linux for a dozen years, and when I was a novice Linux user, I had an HP printer, and it turned out to be a really good choice because it was very well supported in Linux. I continued through the years. If I needed to replace the printer, I just keep going and getting HP printers because they were always a good choice. In recent years, automatic printer discovery has become a feature of a lot of the Linux distros that are out, and this automatic printer discovery works like this. Let me give you this example. If you have an HP printer and a Linux PC both joined to the same network, the HP printer will already be listed in the Printers app for that distribution, and the functional driver will already be in place. In the past, if I installed Linux, I would have, as part of my to-do list, would be, did you install the printer yet? Don't have to do that anymore, especially if it's an HP printer, because it is already installed and already functioning. When I joined my Epson printer to this network, the Epson did appear automatically in the Printers app. However, the printer doesn't work. So here is the automatically discovered printer. This network printer discovered shows up every time I turn on the computer. It just is automatically identified, but the printer driver doesn't work. So I spun my wheels, tried several different options, trying to get things to work right, and I found out that if you take the following 3 steps, you'll have a very successful connection to your Epson printer in the Linux world. So, step number 1, update your Epson printer driver's database. The way you're going to do that will be to do a web search for Epson Linux driver support. When you do that, this is the page that you end up with. So we're epson.com support WA00821, and down a little bit there is a spot that says drivers. We identify, type in the name of the printer and select the search, and we're going to take the first item in the list. So I'm going to click download here. This is a listing of the supported Epson inkjet printers, and it looks like it's a very short list, but if you click on more, you find out that actually Epson's support for inkjet printers is pretty amazing. I'll click on accept, and I'm going to click on package download page. This is the Linux printer driver download page. They're showing here that there are 2 major families of Linux distributions. So there are Debian-based distributions like Ubuntu, Linux Mint. Linux Mint is the operating system that I'm using here, and of course Debian is also listed here. But there are many other distributions that are related to the Debian family, and so if you click on this download button here, you'll end up getting the Epson inkjet printer driver.deb file. If you are using a Linux distribution that is part of the Red Hat package management family, in other words, Red Hat is the parent distribution, I guess you would say, and there are several distributions that are based upon that Red Hat family, so Fedora and OpenSUSE. And if you click this download button, then you'll be getting the Epson inkjet printer driver .rpm instead. After you have downloaded that particular driver file, in the case of Linux Mint, all I had to do was just double click the .deb file to open up what Linux Mint calls the package installer application. Basically, it's the Debian package installer. And this will update and expand the Epson printer database in Linux Mint. Ubuntu doesn't have that package installer app anymore, and so you'll probably have to use a terminal to do this instead. So you open up a terminal and make sure that the terminal is focused on the folder where your .deb file is located. And so then when you type in sudo dpackage Debian package dpkg space -i space and then the file name of that Epson printer.deb file, then you'll be able to run that command from a terminal, and this will accomplish the same thing as the double clicking that I was talking about up here for Linux Mint. If you're using Fedora, then you'll find that double clicking on the .rpm file will also install that into Fedora. And again, this will update and expand your Epson printer database. So that's step one. Step number two, we need to join this Epson ET-2400 printer to the Wi-Fi network. Here is a close-up of the configuration panel on this printer, and you won't see anything that looks like the 2-inch touchscreen that you might see on other printers. That touchscreen would allow you to find the listing for the name of your Wi-Fi network, and then you could, through that clumsy touchscreen, add in your Wi-Fi password, and then that would get the printer joined up. But Epson has a very interesting idea here. They have a phone app that's called Epson Smart Panel. That Smart Panel is the replacement for your 2¼ inch touchscreen that you might have had on some other printers. I downloaded the Epson Smart Panel. It's available for either Android or Apple, and so here's my screen captures of my Android phone, and there's the Epson Smart Panel. When I tapped on that, this screen showed up next, and when I tap on Set Up a New Product, assuming that the printer has been turned on, you will see it showing up and saying, would you like to configure this Epson printer for your use? Certainly I said yes, and through the configuration screens that showed up, one of them said, looks like you have a Wi-Fi network. Do you want to configure this printer to join the network? I said yes. It asked for that network's password, and so I entered it in, and that would join the Epson printer to the network. And then there were a few other configuration screens that you would go through, including installing the ink tanks and getting them filled up. And finally, when that's all accomplished, then this screen was what showed up next. And so you have several things that you can do to control your Epson printer from your phone. But what I wanted to point out was that if you tap on this icon of the printer here, you'll find out that this next screen shows up where you can do basic maintenance. So you can do head cleaning, nozzle checks, firmware updates, and so on. You can do some maintenance on your printer just from your phone. If we go back over to this previous screen, there is a hamburger menu right here that when I tap that, I would end up with this listing of things that can be done. And I then selected device information, and I got this screen. And the part that I want you to take a look at, and this is what you'll want to take note of if you are setting up this printer for your computer, you want to notice the IP address. So take note of that, write that down. You'll need that here in just a little bit. Step number 3. In Linux Mint, you'll need to do the Add Printer option. So let me show you that printer here. Now, I will point out that this automatically discovered printer is something that you can try to change if you right-click it and select Properties. You can go in and attempt to get it to have a different driver, and I was able to do that, but I discovered that all of the changes that I made were tossed out the window as soon as I rebooted the computer. This automatically identified printer here keeps going back to the printer driver that doesn't work. So what I discovered was I needed to add a second driver. So this is the successful driver here. The way that I did that was to click on Add, open up Network Printer, and then we need to look for the printer that is identified with its IP address right here. And then I choose the second item in this list that mentions the word pass-through, and then you click forward and you are installing that printer onto Linux Mint. Now, if you are in Fedora or if you're in Ubuntu, since both of those use the desktop environment called GNOME, the environment that I'm using right here, of course, is Linux Mint, and it uses the Cinnamon desktop environment, and so the Add Printer app doesn't quite look the same. So if you're in Fedora or Ubuntu, you'll want to take a look at this screenshot right here and take note that at the bottom of this Add the Printer screen, there's a spot to type in your network address. When you type that network address in and then just wait for maybe about 5 seconds, this will populate, and eventually you'll see an ET-2400 printer showing up with its IP address as part of the description. That's the one that you want to choose, and then you select Add, and you're done. Once you've done this third step, then you have now a successful printer in your Linux environment. So to review the 3 steps to install this printer: step number 1, download and install the Epson printers drivers file. Step number 2, download and run the Epson Smart Panel on your phone to join your printer to the network. And step number 3, install a new Epson printer in the Printers app. You're set to go. The paper handling for this printer is outstanding. I never see anything even close to a paper jam. So as a consequence, double-sided printing is actually very effective. Now, it doesn't have the ability to do automatic double-sided printing, but you can do it manually. And so when I have a music score that's a 6-page score, I open up the print dialog and I go down to pages and I type in 1, 3, 5, click on print, and then I take that stack of 3 pages and flip them upside down so that I will be printing on the other side of the page. And then I type in 2, 4, 6 down here, and I get a very good double-sided print job. One complaint that I have is if you're printing out a long document and you don't have enough paper in the paper tray, then you'll get a message on your computer that says that the printout was successful, and there'll be a small indication on the printer that you ran out of paper, but it will not respond if you put in some more paper and then you're hoping that you could just tap on a button and then it would resume the print job. So it does kind of forget the print job, so you will have to pay attention. If you have a long document, make sure you got all the pages that you were expecting to get. The ET-2400 works well as a Wi-Fi scanner and as a USB scanner. And whichever way you decide to use that as a scanner, I would suggest that the document scanner that's built into most Linux distributions, also called Simple Scan, is the best scanner app to use, even though Epson does provide a Linux version of their Epson Scan 2 software, not nearly as good as the built-in document scanner that comes with so many distributions. I'm planning to do a quick setup of Open Media Vault just to show a quick and dirty method that I used that really did a nice job for me. And I will also try to do an update to a review of Linux Mint 22. The version of Linux Mint that I'm running right now is 22.1, and my previous video was of 22, and so I'm hoping to put out an updated review. Thanks for watching.